would like to invite Dr. Mercedes, who the founder of Nua Biological, to the stage for her presentation. Please give a warm welcome to her. Give a warm welcome to her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is this okay? Can you hear me? Anyway, it's really nice being in Turkey, and I'm really pleased, well, to be surrounded by all these professionals, and I hope I'll be able to entertain you and to be able to give our view of omega-3, which is something we've been working for quite a few years now in Spain, but from a different perspective. So I hope you learn some new things once we finish this session. And, well, I think it's best to get moving because there's plenty of things to go on. Thanks a lot. Okay, so this is just a general summary of all the different items we're going to cover today. Okay, so I won't stop much here and just get moving. Well, this is just a summary of who I am, okay? I'm a PhD in biology, and I'm the founder of Nua. Nua started in Spain in 2008. Although, as I will explain later to you, 2 years before, in 2006, we started doing research on omega-3. And it was research that made us design or question what was in the market of omega-3 worldwide and try and look at things from a different perspective, which eventually led us to the development of our omega-3, okay? So I have several books published in Spain to do with nutrition and health, and we've done research projects with Spanish institutions. But anyway, that's not the purpose of this talk, so let's move. So in this talk, we're going to be talking about omega-3. Omega-3 are considered food supplements. And I think it's very important that we all have the same frame of mind about what a food supplement is, because I often find, even in Spain, when I deal with professionals, that they do know what they are, but they don't know exactly what they are. So I'll rather just revise what they are, okay? Well, according to the EFSA, is the European Food Safety Authority, okay? So in Europe, we need to do everything according to the laws. Now, we all know that food supplements are not drugs. You don't need a prescription as such to get a food supplement, and you can sell them freely, okay? Now, they're a type of food to supplement our diet. Now, why should we need that? Well, often people don't eat as healthy as they should eat, or for whichever reasons, and they might be lacking certain nutrients. So they might need to go to a pharmacy or somewhere and ask for some calcium, some omega-3, whatever, okay? Now, according to the European definition, it says that the main ingredients in food supplements are nutrients, which in our law refers to vitamins and minerals exclusively, and other substances. So in other substances, we can have fish oil or also any other type of oil, plant extras, amino acids, any other component that we could possibly find, okay? But then you can serve them as pills, tablets, liquids, different galenic forms. But the key element I want to call your attention on is this. The law says that food supplements can have either a nutritional or a physiological effect. And I think this is really important to understand. So let's move forward. As I mentioned earlier, in an ideal world, a daily diet should provide us with all the necessary nutrients. So if we live in a perfect world, nobody will need food supplements. But this doesn't happen, okay? We often eat really bad, and we have lots of pollutants, and things are not quite right. So we say, okay, I need a food supplement. Now, when we use a food supplement, there are two scenarios, a nutritional scenario or a physiological one. What does a nutritional scenario mean? This is the person who says, oh, I'm reaching menopause and I'm really worried about my bones because I don't like foods with calcium, I don't like dairy products or nuts and seeds, so I might have a problem with my calcium. So I quickly go to the pharmacy and I say, please, could you give me a food supplement with calcium to strengthen my bones? Okay, fair enough. Or somebody might go to the pharmacy and say, oh, I hate fish, I really don't like it, but I'm hearing about omega-3, which is really good in fish, and if I don't take fish, I have no omega-3. Please, could you give me some omega-3? In these instances, that person is asking on a nutritional basis to give him a supplement to sort of complement the diet. Okay, so normally, this kind of supplements, you don't notice anything when you take them. It's an act of faith. Each time I take calcium or, I don't know, any mineral or magnesium, I don't feel like Popeye. I get really, no, I just feel normal. Okay? So, to my view, at least in Spain and most of Europe, probably 80%, if not more, of the products that are sold in everywhere are probably with a nutritional effect. So, in effect, are products that you take them and you don't notice anything, okay? There's nothing bad with that. But that's the fact. Now, there are other products which are still food supplements, which have a physiological effect. And I'm going to try and explain what a physiological effect is. I often try to make it simple. I use this example of the car, okay? When we buy a car in a garage, it's a brand new car, and it's meant to be working perfect. So this is the ideal, line of everything is right. But they tell me, in a year's time, you need to come back and we need to change the oil and the filters and pump the wheels and do certain checkups in your car. And why do they do that? Because they know that in a year's time, although I'm really happy with my car, which is really new to me, they know that just by usage, just when you go with bumps and braking and accelerating, certain things, there are subtle things that are not as well adjusted. So each time we take it to the garage, we kind of try and readjust it back as close as possible to original. A physiological effect is that. Often you get people that they are not feeling, some people are really healthy, okay? Everything is perfect with them. Some people are really poorly, they have loads of drugs. So this is white and this is black. But often you see people who are in the gray area, people who perhaps they don't feel perfect, but they don't need a medication. But they say, I'm not feeling right. Could you please help me? And the doctor say, well, all the analyses are right, everything is okay. Say, well, but I'm not feeling quite right. So we often find people who are not in either of these two sides, they're just in the middle. So this is a window of opportunity which is ideal to use food supplements with a physiological effect. Because a food supplement with a physiological effect has the strength to kind of modulate certain metabolical routes that perhaps were not so perfect and turn them as close as possible to the optimum. And by doing that, that person feels better. So when you take a food supplement with a physiological effect, people often notice the difference. Oh, I'm feeling better. Something's changing. This is making me feel better. But having a physiological effect doesn't mean it is a drug. So drugs are here. Sorry. This is drugs. So we can notice an improvement in our well-being just by taking a food supplement as long as it's in the physiological range, okay? Which is not a drug one. So it's important because often when you use a food supplement, you don't know, is it just a nutritional one, a physiological one? Like in Nua, I'm the person who does all the formulations. And I always aim to the physiological effect, although I do have some products with nutritional effect. But the majority tend to be here because I like people to notice the difference when they take my food supplements, okay? But this is up to each lab. Okay? So this is just a general introduction so that we all have our brains, we understand what we're talking about. Now, we're going to get into omega-3. And to start talking about omega-3, we need to talk about fats. You know? Our food, as you know, has carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So omega-3 are a type of fat in a diet. And 90% of the fats we ingest in a diet are called triglycerides. And the unitary element of a triglycerides are fatty acids. So there are loads of fatty acids in everything we eat. And they are 90% of the fats we eat in our diet, okay? But those fatty acids cannot be floating in the food matrix. They need to go comfortably sat in a car. And that car is called glycerol. The glycerol molecule is a 3-carbon molecule which can allocate 3 fatty acids. So I make it into this nice car, and here we just sit our fatty acids. So each food we eat has different passengers in a car, okay? And 90% of our food is a triglyceride, and the remaining 10% of the fat we eat is as waxes, cholesterol, and something called phospholipid. Phospholipid is very similar to triglyceride, but in one of the windows of the car, instead of having the fatty acid, we have a phosphorus group. But it's very similar, and we were well adapted to absorb this kind of food, okay? Now, what are omega-3? Omega-3 are a type of fatty acid, and which we mainly find in cold water fish, okay? We have white fish, but these have very little omega-3. It's mainly the fish that make your kitchen really smelly, okay? Those are the ones. And why do we call them omega-3? I mean, there are also omega-6, omega-5, omega-9. Well, as we see here, fatty acids are like, I don't know, like a collar with loads of pearls. Each pearl is a carbon molecule. So we start counting our pearls from the left side, how many pearls we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so on. And those pearls are just holding hands one with the other one. But every so often, some fatty acids, they have what we call a double bond. Instead of having one single hand, we have a double hand holding the pearls. That's a double bond, which is this. So we count at which number of carbon the first double bond of the molecule is. One molecule can have 2, 3, 4 double bonds, but where is the first one? Well, if it's in the 3rd carbon, you become an omega-3. If the first double bond is in the 6th carbon, then it's an omega-6 fat. Like olive oil only has one single double bond, which is in the 9th carbon. So that's why olive oil is omega-9. So that's where the omega thing comes, okay? Okay, so here we can see the main omegas in a diet, okay? Here we have, that's olive oil, omega-9, okay? Here we have saturated fats, which are not so healthy. And as you can see, saturated fats have no double bonds. They have single bonds between carbons. So saturated fats at room temperature, they are hard. If you take a piece of butter and you leave it out of the fridge, it won't melt. It'll stay hard because there are no double bonds. So nature say, well, not everybody wants to have, you know, depending where you live in the world, you might need foods with more double bonds, okay? Like olive oil, there's only one single double bond. But if in winter you have a jar in a big bottle of olive oil in the garage or somewhere outside, you can tell that it's all like getting hard inside, like with a whitish cloud, because there's only one double bond, so it cannot resist cold weather that easily. Okay, so nature say, okay, what happens if somebody lives up in the North Pole or in Antarctica? It's really cold. When you go out of your igloo, it's like minus 25 degrees. I cannot feed an Eskimo with this, because as soon as he gets out of the igloo, he's going to be hard like a stone, because he has no double bonds in the fats he's eating. So nature say, okay, let's give them fats with plenty of double bonds. So here we have marine omega-3, the one we're going to talk about today. This is EPA. It has 20 carbons and 5 double bonds. DHA has 22 carbons and 6 double bonds. In order to make these fats hard, I need to lower the temperature to minus 54 degrees. So this is the strategy that nature gave us for those people and animals who live in high latitudes to resist such cold temperatures. So we cannot tell a guy, Eskimo guy, oh, you should take Mediterranean food, it's really good, because olive oil only has one double bond. He's going to become like a statue. He needs to really take fish and animals with plenty of double bonds, okay? Also, you should notice that there is also omega-3 in land plants, okay? Not only, but they are nothing alike. Being omega-3 means nothing in the sense that it's like, no, my surname is Aguirre. Well, there are lots of Aguirre in Spain who are not my relatives. Sharing a name doesn't mean we are the same. So the only reason why there are land omega-3 is because the first double bond is in the third carbon. That's the only thing in common, okay? But as far as benefits and so on, they are totally different molecules. So don't get confused. Like that's like linseed oil. That will be a type of a land omega-3, okay? But today we're going to focus in marine omega-3, okay? So in theory, omega-3, we have land omega-3, which we can find in seeds and nuts and some vegetables. Our body has the necessary workers, enzymes, that can transform land omega-3 into marine omega-3. But this has been measured. And what we've seen is that that transformation is not that efficient. So if we take 2 grams of land omega-3, the amount of EPA we can get is between 0.2% to 8%, and DHA almost nothing, okay? So if somebody, say a vegetarian person who doesn't eat animal food, if they are thinking of getting good levels of EPA and DHA with just land omega-3, that's not possible. Although it is true that vegetarians have a slightly higher conversion rate than people who also eat meat and so on, okay? So if we want to benefit from this, then we need to take directly EPA or DHA. Also, something that we've seen is that when we take DHA, as from 1 gram onwards, round about 10% becomes EPA, okay? So but if we take EPA, the levels of DHA don't go up. But if we take a certain amount of DHA, we can have a bit of EPA, okay? Physiologically, that's happening. Now, where do omega-3 come from? Often people think fish produce omega-3. No, there isn't a single fish in the world that produces omega-3. Omega-3 is produced by somebody that we can't see with our eyes, something really teeny tiny, which gives that green, bluish color to the seawater, which is the phytoplankton, unicellular organisms that do photosynthesis, they produce oxygen, and within their cells they have these drops of oil. They are the ones that produce omega-3, and the animal chain accumulates that in their body fat. So the bigger the animal, the more omega-3 we have, but they are identical. So if I choose krill as a source of omega-3, the molecule is identical to that of an anchovy, or that of a tuna, or a whale, or a polar bear. They all have, because they are just borrowing, you know, that. But also, there is a worry because the larger the animal, they don't only accumulate omega-3, they can also accumulate more heavy metals, furans, and all sorts of contaminants. So the larger the animal, the more of everything, of good and bad things we can find in that fat, okay? So that's something we'll address later on. Now, something to point out is that in fish, EPA and DHA, the marine omega-3, come as triglycerides, okay? So any brand of omega-3 that's been sold in Turkey, originally, this is the way they come, this way. Unlike krill oil comes on a phospholipid form, okay? But we humans, we adapted, as I say, to simulate both versions, so that's not a problem. Now, when you make a commercial product, there is this thing to take into account. As I told you earlier, both EPA and DHA have loads of double bonds. And double bonds really attract oxygen. So the more double bonds a fat has, the more easily it can be attacked by oxygen. And if you oxidize a fat, it becomes rancid. and that's no good. So that's why when we do an omega-3 product, we have to include an antioxidant, something that will protect these double bonds whilst our omega-3 bottle is waiting on a shelf to be purchased and then taken by a user. Okay? So normally, in most cases, 99% of the people worldwide, they use just vitamin E. And in most cases, it's soya vitamin E. But in Nua, many years ago, we changed it for sunflower. We didn't want to use soya because some people don't like it so much, so we decided to use sunflower vitamin E. But in some few cases, you might find rosemary extract as well as an antioxidant to protect the oil. Now, those who sell krill oil, they don't need to add that because krill oil already has a natural antioxidant called astaxanthin. Okay? But please don't be tricked by that because astaxanthin, although it's an antioxidant, if you want to use it to benefit from its antioxidant properties, you need to take it like in 12 milligrams or so on. And the amount here is really tiny. So it's just enough to protect the oil from oxidation, but that won't have any effect on our body. The same way the amount of vitamin E in this soft gel won't have any effect on our general body. It will just protect the oil, okay? Now, there's a third type of vehicle we can find in omega-3 products, okay? Which is called ethyl ester. This is a version that doesn't exist in nature, that's been created by men because of our convenience. And it's like a tiny car where you can only fit one passenger. And it's an alcohol car that, because it doesn't exist in nature, when I have EPA or DHA in this car, and it goes through my digestion, the pancreatic lipase, who's like the scissor that needs to take the passenger, separate the passenger from the car to be able to absorb it, doesn't recognize that union. So like 35% of omega-3, which comes as ethyl ester, we will lose it. We won't absorb it. So normally, for the same amount of omega-3, an ethyl ester version will be 30% cheaper. But it's also 35% less bioavailable. Okay, so these are things for you to know about the structure of omega-3 products. Now, in this slide, I'm going to explain the Nua's story, okay? Why is it we came to do what we did? Well, around about 18 years ago, Nua didn't exist, and we were just really curious to study omega-3 because at the time we were meaning to use it for eye problems. So let's see what there is in the Spanish market. So we went out there and got loads of omega-3 from different brands and tried to see what was in them. So we started analyzing them. And when we do that, we say, okay, more or less, on average, there are like 40 fatty acids in these fish oil capsules that everybody's selling. But we humans are only interested in two, which are DHA and EPA. So why are they making me eat all this fat, which I haven't got a clue what there is there? 70% of the content of the soft gel is non-omega-3. And obviously fish probably has that because they need it for their physiology, but my physiology and fish physiology are nothing alike. So this seems a bit weird. So we say, well, I'm interested in this, and I'm forced to take all this, which I'm not interested in. So we started going around the world, asking people who work with fish oil, say, excuse me, could you use your machinery just to remove this, because I'm not interested in that. I don't want to take that. Often people say, I haven't got a clue what you're asking me for. I don't know. I don't know how to do that. So it took us a while to go around and find somebody that would be ready to give it a go. Eventually, somebody did it. And we managed to clean, to a great extent, all this fat, which means I gain all this space to put more omega-3. But then I say, well, why should EPA and DHA be always together like Siamese? You know, they don't need to be together. They have their own personality. So I decided to put them apart. I say, no, you DHA, you go to your house. You EPA, you go to your house. So by doing that, that's why 1,000 milligrams of fish oil, which is all this, is different to 1,000 milligrams of just DHA or EPA. Okay? So, because we humans are mainly interested in this too, so let the fish have the rest. Okay. So often we see that people say, oh, humans must take EPA and DHA always together and in a certain ratio. This is something you're going to see a lot in the internet. And it doesn't make sense to see that. Why? Because 99.9% of the products in the world market have EPA and DHA together. So if I'm looking to use that product, an omega-3 product, in areas where DHA is really powerful, I want a ratio in that product that has more DHA than EPA. But if I'm looking to use omega-3 to address problems where EPA is really good, I want a product where the ratio is more EPA than DHA. It's common sense. So speaking about ratios makes sense around the world because everybody has them together. But physiologically, it's not necessary to have always together. Every time you take omega-3, I have to take always both together. No. I haven't found a single paper in 16 years, a serious paper, saying that humans need always to have both of them together. So after all this process, we took the gamble and say, okay, let's do things our own way. With cleaner oil, we're going to separate them because we strongly believe that DHA has its own personality and EPA has its own personality. So we do not always need to take both. We'll decide when we use one, when we use the other. So we were the first brand in the world that separated DHA and EPA in different soft gels, and also the first brand in the world to give more than 1,000 milligrams of either EPA or DHA in a soft gel. So it was really a big breakthrough at the time. And everybody saw it was like, you know, this is really weird. It's like a spaceship coming, you know, from outer space. What's this? So it was really shocking. But we really believed in it. And so anyway, that's the way we took it. And also, every time we're very concerned about giving all sorts of guarantee to our users or to professionals who wish to prescribe our omega-3. So in the first place, for more than 14 years, we have this quality certification. That's the International Fish Oil Standards, the 5-star IFOS. This is an independent organization for quality on omega-3. So every time we manufacture a batch or a DHA or EPA, we send it to Canada. And they analyze the final product and checked that there are no heavy metals, no furans, PCBs, dioxins, that the oil is not oxidized, and that the amount of DHA or EPA is not below the amount stated on the label. So we're not tricking the users. So it's real, okay? So we do that. Also, with every manufacturer, we check that it's gluten-free and lactose-free. Not for any reason because there's no gluten or lactose in fish, but during manufacture there could be cross-contamination, you know. So just to make sure, I mean, normally that doesn't happen, but just for the peace of mind of people who are sensitive to gluten or lactose, so we always check on that. Also, we have a second certificate, which is NSF certified for sports. Our oil is being used more and more by sports professionals. In Spain and out of Spain, we have Premier League teams in Italy, in England, Spain, and also not only football, but skiing and all sorts of people. And they can risk their career if they take any food supplement that has any remains of doping substances. So NSF checks that we're missing 280 doping substances that are not, that are banned in this respect. So we also have that certification. So all in all, and also because it's so clean, by cleaning so much the oil, we don't have fish protein. So loads of people who are allergic to fish, because as you know, a person who's allergic to a foodstuff is allergic to the protein fraction of that food. So there's no protein. So we found that many users that had problems in Spain with other brands, with our, they have no problem. So at least that's also another interesting point for users, okay? So this is a general view of what Nua is. Now, what we've seen and what has been already published is that we could say, ask somebody to take 1,000 milligrams of DHA, but by taking 10 soft gels with just 100 milligrams. If you multiply 100 by 10, that's 1,000 milligrams. Or I could give them one single soft gel of Nua, which already has 1,000 milligrams. Well, the effect is different. The well-being you achieve when you use highly concentrated and purified fish oil is much higher than when you take the same amount of omega-3, but with more empty fats or non-omega-3 fats. So the result is not the same, although you give the same dose of the omega-3. And science supports this view. This paper by Brin in 2006 is the one of the papers that really helped us to open our eyes. So what they did, they tried these different purities of omega-3 in a group of patients, giving them 5 grams a day for 14 days, just 14 days, to see their triglycerides and VLDL levels. And the higher the purity, the more reductions they had than with the lower purity. So this was already researched by somebody in 2006. And actually this paper did help us to sort of start building up the idea of the product we were wanting to produce, okay? So higher purity means more potent product, okay? Because we don't know what there is there. Okay, now, should EPA be together or should it be separated? Does that matter? Well, in some instances, really it's better to have it separated. Why? Like a child, when he's in the mother's womb, okay, we'll look at it afterwards, there are 2 fats which are essential in the brain development. One is called arachidonic acid. It's an omega-3 6 fat, which is really present in a diet. Arachidonic acid is present in all dairy products, meat, fish, sauces, processed foods. It's everywhere. Actually, there's an excess of arachidonic acid in our diet, okay? Which we'll talk about it later on, and the effect it has in inflammatory conditions, okay? So we don't need to supply with a food supplement to a baby or a mother. But because arachidonic acid is 45% of the unsaturated fat in our brain, and DHA is the second most abundant fat in the brain, which represents 35% of the unsaturated fat. So it's an essential fat there, okay? But our brain has no EPA. There is no EPA in our brain, which is another omega-3. It's really good, but there's no EPA. So here is the omega-3 reaction. This is the land omega-3, which we mentioned earlier that our body very timidly can transfer a bit in EPA and DHA, and this is the omega-6. And what happens? We have these 2 chain of reactions, and for the transformation, there are some workers in the middle, which are called enzymes, and both series use the same workers to process those fats. What happens is that arachidonic acid has 20 carbons, and EPA also has 20 carbons. So if I take EPA, I'm going to fight with arachidonic acid. So if I give loads of EPA to a pregnant woman, if I give an omega-3 with EPA to a pregnant woman, and it have certain amount of EPA, that EPA is going to try and push arachidonic acid from the cell membranes in the brain. And I don't want that, because arachidonic acid is the main fat in the brain. And there's no EPA. So why am I giving EPA? I could give DHA. DHA doesn't fight with this one. And both arachidonic acid and DHA are really necessary for my brain. So why should I be giving EPA? So my advice, if somebody is pregnant or up to 6 years old, when the time when we finish building a brain, there's no need to give EPA to children or little babies. Small amounts won't be helpful, but there are certain products with 400 milligrams, 600 milligrams. No, there's no need to give that. And in fact, for those of you who have a pharmacy, when you get back there on Monday, check on your milk powder milk that you sell in your pharmacy. Milk powder milk has arachidonic acid in almost everywhere. Many, many brands include DHA. There isn't a single brand in the world that has EPA in milk powder milk. If omega-3 are so good, why don't they put both of them? So even now, there are some papers. As I told you, in 2008, Nua went out to the market separating EPA and DHA. But now, in 2020, 2023, and so on, we're getting papers saying, well, isn't it time to separate EPA and DHA? So now people are talking about questioning whether it's good to have them together always. Because what they've seen in certain studies is that, like on the cardiovascular basis, people, they are really good studies using EPA and DHA together. And they are good results. But they saw that if they gave just EPA, the results were better than if we had EPA and DHA. But in neurological studies, what they saw is that giving EPA and DHA together is good. But if we give just DHA, it's much better. So sometimes in certain areas, having one together with the other one, it's sort of penalizing the other one. So we could have them together sometimes, but not necessarily always. And now science is telling us that. Okay? And once again, look what it says about children. It says, both arachidonic acid and DHA should be included in preterm formula, and oils containing significant amounts of EPA should be avoided to prevent interference with the growth-promoted effects of arachidonic acid. So this is published. So why are we giving omega-3 with EPA to children? Or here, in view of the potential adverse effects of EPA, any potential beneficial effect of fish oil supplementation on milk, milk DHA content might be outweighed. So EPA could interfere with the benefits of DHA. Okay, so this is things that are already published. So it's not such a bad idea by having separated DHA and EPA, we can customize omega-3 to each person. Say, I ask some questions, say, well, I think you just need DHA, or no, just EPA. Or in some very little instances, you might have both of them. And this is as well another paper from Dasco. And Dasco, these are one of the world producers of formula milk. Okay, and once again, the oils that should contain no or only very low levels of EPA, which has been associated with reduced growth in infants. So there are many, there are already papers dealing with this. So the question is, should we keep recommending omega-3 to pregnant and lactating women regardless of the EPA content? Well, this is just something for thought. In my view, best to avoid EPA in pregnancy and small children just before 6. After 6, you can give both if you want. And before 6, if you give mainly DHA and say 100 milligrams or 200 of EPA, that's not a big deal. But we often see products that they have 400, 300 and odd, 400, 600, 500. I wouldn't advise that. Okay? even this is a formula made in Turkey, and they have DHA and arachidonic acid, but in Turkey they don't put EPA either. And I'm sure if you go to your pharmacy, you won't see it either. Okay? So, once again, science is supporting new in the sense of the dosing. In Nua, either our EPA, well, we also have smaller soft gels, but in the large soft gels, they have 1,002 milligrams of EPA, and the other soft gel has at least 1,000 of DHA. There's slightly more, okay? And what science is saying is that most of the magic of the physiological effect of omega-3 comes out when you use, 2,000 milligrams or more. In our experience, between 2 and 1 grams, you can see magic. It works really, really well. So, and now there have been loads of papers saying, hey, I think we've been doing things wrong for a long time. Because one thing we find, there are loads of papers on omega-3, but sometimes you try to replicate a study and it doesn't work the same. You don't get the same results. And they are very irregular at times. Sometimes omega-3 are really good for this, but then somebody else does another study and says, well, I didn't find it was good for that. And it's really confusing. Why? Because people are using omega-3s that have at least 40 fats fighting with each other. We haven't got a clue what the hell is in there. You're giving loads of soft gels to reach higher doses, and it's not so precise. But when you just have the molecule you are interested in, it's much easier. And results just are totally different. As I always say, we can talk about a mobile. I have a mobile. Yes, everybody has a mobile. But you could have a €150 mobile or 1,000 one. And why do they have such a different price? Because, well, the expensive one probably does many interesting things. Or olive oil. We Mediterranean countries, Spain and Turkey, what would you prefer? Refined olive oil or extra virgin oil? Well, surely we're going to prefer extra virgin oil. It's not the same. So when you work with omega-3, it's important. We believe the purity and concentration and the dose you give. Under a nutritional basis, you will work with doses below 1,000 milligrams. That's fine. You can give 500, whatever. But if you're looking for a physiological effect to notice things, then you need to work over 1,000 milligrams. Normally we start with 2,000 and then we can do a maintenance dose, okay? So anyway, I think for this first part, that's all for now.